Hey there, fiber friends. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Melissa. I'm the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company. Welcome. So it's been about a week since I chatted with all of you, and I've got a fair amount of updates. So let's dive in. I do have a finished object, and you may remember that I had dyed up sock sets based on this book, Maine Characters, which is sort of like a modern day Parent Trap. So I dyed sock sets, and I had these last weekend at Public Knit Toxication. And so I wanted to have a sample for them. And I did, if you watched my last video, you know that I finished one and I just had the toe left on another. And I did manage to get both of them finished. I did indeed finish them both. I do need to weave in the ends, but since I can technically wear them without the ends woven in, I consider them done. I have a stack of things that need their ends woven in, so I will probably do that one evening. I am loving this. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I nailed this book cover, if I do say so myself. I loved this cover even before I even knew what this book was about. I have not started it yet. It is probably going to get read over the summer. I have quite a few advanced reader copies of books that come out in the next couple of weeks, so I need to get through those before I can start tackling some of my physical copy of books. But I am really pleased with these. I love the light speckling in the contrast color. All of the mini skeins have just a hint of speckling along with the speckling in the larger skein. So you can find these on my website under my sock sets. I have them in full sock sets, but I also have them in micro sock sets. So if you only need a 50-gram skein with a 20-gram mini, I have those for you as well. So super excited. I did a vanilla sock. I knit these on a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle. I do 64 stitches. I cast on and I do about an inch of cuff, and then from cuff to my heel flap, I do 7 inches. Then I do a slip stitch, heel flap, and gusset. And then from my heel turn to where I want to start my color change or begin my toe decreases, that's 7¼ inches. And yeah, so super happy that I managed to get these finished. As I mentioned last week, there is a new puppy in the house, so I was really unsure about what I was going to get accomplished knitting wise and what I wasn't. I didn't get a ton of new knitting opportunity the first couple of days of having her. That's a big change in the dynamic in the house as a whole. My husband was in town for, bringing her in and kind of introducing her to the rest of the dogs. And then he was here while I was gone all day for public knit toxication. So those first couple of days with 3 Bostons already in the house, it definitely was a dynamic shift. Lyric, totally cool with it. Like, okay, great, another puppy, whatever. The twins, Legend and Petal. Petal seemed super excited. I think they both were super excited at first, but Legend is just kind of on the bigger end of Boston's, and he was not thrilled at first, like, oh my God, you're my mommy type of thing. I think she and Petal will be fast friends in the end. They have very similar energy levels, but they don't know how to play with a puppy. So those first couple of days was really just kind of allowing my dogs to kind of decompress and get used to the idea of this really tiny puppy in the house. So that meant I needed to be able to move at a moment's notice during those kind of dog introductions. And then, quite honestly, when you have a sleeping puppy, those first few days, you don't want to do anything but cuddle them. So that's what I did. Moving into whips, though, because these are the only thing that I actually finished. I am so close on my Astro Pop. It's not even funny. So the last time I saw you, I don't even think I had it with me, but I have finished my sleeves. I did those. I have knit the body, and I am actually on the ribbing of the body. Like, that's all I have left. And quite honestly, I thought I would have this done before I needed to record this, but it's just not been the case. I need to have 2 inches of ribbing done. I've got about an inch done, and I have this much yarn left. So I may not get the full 2 inches. I'm not going to play yarn chicken by trying to do the whole entire ribbing. I will go as far as I think I can and make sure that I have enough to do my bind off. I'll do a Jenny surprisingly stretchy bind off. That's what I did for my sleeves. And really I do it because I don't want to be bothered with anything else. But I did get a ton more knitting done on this. For those of you who haven't seen my last few episodes, this is the Astro Pop Tee by Marie Green. It's the knit along for July. She calls it her 4-day knit along. And I had an advanced copy of the pattern, and so the wool, or it's a 50% cotton, 50% wool. It's my Rising Tide Fiber Company. The bright yellow is called Hello Sunshine. This greenish color, it's sort of like a bright chartreuse, is called Disruption. And then for the orange and the pink, I used scraps from another t-shirt that I worked on earlier in the spring. And so it was actually fingering weight. I chose to hold it double, just pulling from inside and outside of that cake. The orange is called Orange Crush, and the pink was just my way of adding a pop of color, and it's called Intoxicating. So I so badly wanted this done, but I think it's pretty manageable that I'll be able to finish this in the next night or so. Now that Paisley is a little more acclimated to being in the house, it's been about a week. So now that she's more acclimated, I am finding myself knitting more, particularly when she's napping. I won't knit when she is like a live wire. I'm just not ready to introduce her to that. She is very curious with like knitting bags and baskets that are sitting around. She's already pulling herself up and kind of like peering in and grasping onto drawstrings, that kind of thing. So, but I have knit while she's been awake and next to me or kind of in my lap, but kind of coming out of a nap, so still a little groggy. But she's getting there. And speaking of Paisley, I am still working on my knit sock using the Paisley Purl colorway that is named after her. As you can see, it's a purple based, and it has greens and pinks, dark purples, a little bit of like goldeny brownish yellow in there. I did talk about a hat that I did with it last week, and then I did start this sock, and I had just finished my gusset round, so I was in the round and round. I've put a couple more inches on it. I have a couple more inches to go, and then it should be ready to start my toe decreases. I'm hoping to finish this sock in the next week, and then be able to immediately cast on the second one. I need to at least finish this one before fall so that there is a sample on the truck. But I'm really loving this colorway. These are knit on US 1 2.25 millimeter, same vanilla sock that I did for the main character colorway socks. So this is definitely easier to pick up and knit when there's a puppy around because it's so much more compact, where the sweater is a lot more, there's a lot more weight to the project. Obviously, now that the sweater is almost finished, I have that tiny ball that I had been knitting in, this is one of those Yarn Valet yarn bowls. It's a suction cup on the bottom. I've had mine for years. I got it in a Yarn Box subscription before they went out of business. I think you can find these at Michael's. You can feed your yarn through the little hole. It did have a little plastic piece that kind of went across here that fed the yarn through it. It was open-ended though, so you could pull your, slide your yarn in and out. Mine snapped off because I have a tendency to drop this down in project bags and take it wherever I'm going. I do like it because it's plastic. Again, it does have a suction cup on the bottom, so it doesn't slide around things very easily. So I think they're like, I don't know, $12, $15 at Michael's. You used to be able to buy them there. You may be able to find them other places. But I like it with having so many dogs and dogs that like to be in my lap or just on the furniture, on the sofa or the bed next to me. I just find this really handy because I don't have to worry about it slipping or sliding off of furniture by accident and breaking. But the sock is definitely a more mobile project. It is the type of project that I would sit the yarn ball, sometimes I would carry this outside with me and sit on the patio while the dogs are outside. I don't really have that luxury right now because, again, Paisley is so little. In fact, she's small enough that there are parts of my privacy fence. We have those composite, the vinyl fencing. And so there are sections where she technically, if she tried, she could get under it. She's only 4 pounds right now. So I try to keep a really close eye on her in the yard. Besides, she's kind of at that age where, puppies explore the world with their mouths. And so I don't really want her eating random bugs and things off the ground. And that brings me to my Magna Flora, which I have not touched, but I am really anxious to get back to working on it. This is the Tee pattern by Elisa Hartzell. Again, I am using the Sandusgarn Liane, and it is in color 4335, which is sort of like this duller raspberry color. It has this beautiful lace pattern at the top, and I have already done the sleeves. They're kind of a rolled sleeve. I did go back and look, and it does have a lace trim at the bottom, which I think I'm going to leave out, and just go right into the ribbing. And you can see I've made some pretty steady progress on this. So as soon as I can put down the yellow one, like I get it bound off, I will immediately go back to this one because I would love to be able to wear these this summer. We have finally hit a point in Maryland where summer has gotten gross. Yesterday and today have been incredibly humid. At least today there's like a really strong breeze, which has been wonderful because when obviously I'm going outside in the yard more frequently with the dogs because there is a puppy in the house. So, I mean, nobody likes sweating, and I feel like we've now reached that stage where you take your bath or your shower, the first part of the day, and then before bed, you're wanting to take another one because it's so sticky and gross out. I do have dogs that like to sunbathe, but because they're Boston Terriers, they have those, what do they call them? Brachycephalic faces, basically smushed in faces. 3 of mine have more of a snout. I try to find puppies that have much more of a snout so that they are less likely to have breathing problems. Paisley, however, does have a bit more of a smushed in nose, and right now her nostrils are a little more narrow than we would probably like them as a baby. So we'll see if as her head grows, her nostrils kind of open up a little bit like Legend and Petals did. If not, that can be surgically corrected. They basically can put in stents or kind of carve out more space up in there, but we won't know until she's ready to be spayed if that's going to be the case. And so that's pretty much all my knitting that I have done. So finished a pair of socks, got a couple more inches done on this sock, and I am so close to being finished that Astro Pop sweater. It's not even funny. That brings us into what have I been watching? What have I been reading? So, I recently listened to the audiobook of 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. And so I finished that and I intentionally listened to it because I wanted to watch that series on Hulu, Disney, whatever we're calling it these days. And I refused to start the show before I read the book. And quite honestly, I thought about starting the show last week. I was looking for something new to watch and I didn't really have anything in mind. So I almost started it, but then I started the book and I really held off on starting it. But I did finish the book. I enjoyed it. And I am enjoying the series. I will say that it is not the type of show that I can binge in one sitting. It doesn't have a lighthearted take on the darker nature of the story. So, because it is, I wouldn't call it a thriller. It does have some sort of more mysterious plot points. It reminds me very much of like a White Lotus type of storyline. So there's definitely something mysterious and kind of creepy about it, but you don't really know what that mysterious or creepy thing is. I mean, I have a really good idea because I obviously finished the book, and I think you could totally start the book at like 25% in, watch the first few episodes, and keep working, kind of read them somewhat in tandem. But so I am watching that. And then the other day, the second season of America's Sweetheart, the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders show on Netflix came on, and I did kind of binge my way through that the last few days, like knitting in the evenings. So that was really enjoyable. That's a series. Obviously, the first season of it was last year on Netflix. But even back in the day when they had I think they called it Making the Team years ago, where basically it was a similar premise where you're watching people audition and try and make that cheerleading team. And it was, I want to say, on like CMT, and then it moved to maybe GAC. I don't know. I kind of lost track of it over the years, but I did watch the early seasons of that. I liked it then. I was a dancer in high school and in college, so it just kind of is right up my alley. I do think that last year and this year they kind of followed some emotional storylines with some of the women who were trying out or who were part of the team. I do kind of like that more humanitarian storyline of it for being a docuseries. So I enjoyed that. And really, that's all I've been watching. I'm not spending a ton of time with the TV on. I will say now that school's out, I do find myself with my phone in my hand and watching short form video, which is kind of becoming a problem. For me, I don't think it is a problem in general per se, but I do notice myself kind of sliding into that territory where, what are you doing? You're wasting time. So I'm trying to work a little bit on getting my phone out of my hand and spending more time with audiobook, like going back to having audiobooks on versus being just watching a bunch of, not nonsense per se, but just spending time on my phone that I can be doing other things, and not even doing other things to necessarily be productive, but there are more enriching ways of spending my leisure time versus my phone in my hand. So I have kind of gone back to reading. Before I brought Paisley home the last couple weeks, I read Puppy Kindergarten. And this is not a training book. Like, I know it talks about the science of raising a great dog. This is not a training book. I mean, there is an appendix that kind of talks about these are the supplies you would need for getting a puppy. Here's, the schedule we adhere to. A few years ago, Brian Hare and Vanessa Woods had a documentary on, I think it was Netflix again, and I think it was called Inside the Mind of a Dog, maybe. I'll have to double check and put it down below. So these are the people that run the puppy kindergarten, like, research facility at Duke University in North Carolina. And they basically, the puppy kindergarten takes a series of like 8-week-old puppies and every year, and they raise them there with the help of students at Duke, but they basically study them and prepare them for going on to foster parents who will then raise them to be service dogs. And so you followed that process in the documentary visually. This book, I was so enamored with that Netflix documentary that I was more curious about the behind the scenes. So that's what this book is that they kind of talk through some of the classes, like they call it the class of 2018, class of 2020, that sort of thing. And they did talk briefly about what the experience was like when they had to take puppies out of the facility because of the pandemic and then bring puppies home where they weren't set up. Their home was not set up for, like 6 puppies during that time. But they discovered that it really didn't matter, that these puppies got just as an intensive upbringing during what is considered the most formative weeks of a puppy's life. From a cognitive standpoint, between the ages of 8 weeks and 20 weeks, they are literally like little sponges. for information, because they're taking in so much sensory information and they're learning how to communicate with humans. So it was really fascinating, but they did discover during the pandemic that there was no deficit in what the puppies learned, whether they were at the university, in that facility building, and then, of course, being cared for by students and taken all over campus, versus being at home. So this book really kind of just walks you through cognitively how do we determine what makes a great dog. That's what they're looking for, because there is sort of, I don't want to say a shortage of service dogs, but not every dog that gets trained to be a service dog ends up actually graduating the program over the first couple of years. And so some dogs, like you see in that documentary, end up being more intelligent in other areas. And it kind of talks about the different areas of sort of emotional intelligence that these dogs have. And sometimes when they test them at, say, 8 and 9 weeks, and what they excel at, that might not be the thing that they excel at. And that dogs have such a wide ranging set of personalities, and they're really trying to hone in on not necessarily replicating dogs, but figuring out faster what area of intelligence does this puppy excel at, so that they can focus on it and hopefully find a good place for it, whether that's a service dog that's meant for someone who has what we call an invisible disease, or maybe they're better off with someone who has PTSD, like a veteran, that sort of thing. So if you have dogs and you're just kind of curious about dogs and cognition, this was a really fascinating read. They talk about their own dog that was like the pinnacle of dogs, and then they talk about how that dog kind of taught these younger puppies when it came in, and then ultimately, like when that dog. The other book that I recently finished, and I did this one as an audiobook, was The Wrong Family by Tarryn Fisher. And part of me thinks this would have been a book for me that probably would have been better absorbed had I physically read it instead of listen to it in audiobook format. This is another, Tarryn Fisher is known for writing thrillers, particularly domestic thrillers, but she's kind of on the creepy side, and this one is sort of a spin on the idea of, I don't know how to talk about this book without revealing a lot of things, but there's some bouncing around of timelines. There is some bouncing around of timelines, and there is just this underlying creepiness. Like there's this, and then there's this lady that's kind of creepy. I know I'm giving a horrible synopsis of what this book was about, but I can't say it was my cup of tea. I think I would have enjoyed it more had I physically read it, either in a physical book or an ebook, but I chose to listen to it because it was available through the library. I also listened to, the other book that I recently finished listening to was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. And I did listen to this one as well. And this is a book I've been wanting to read for quite some time. I do enjoy historical fiction. However, I absorb historical fiction better when I listen to it than if I read it. Not to say that I can't read it. It just tends to take me longer because it's not as fast paced generally as, say, a thriller or a romance novel. So I dove into this one knowing that there would definitely be some weight to it. You can't reference Nazi Germany or Auschwitz and not understand going into it that there's going to be sensitive content and kind of some heaviness to the story. And I was hesitant to pick it up this go round when I found it available at my library. Just with the general political environment we've been in here in the States, and I wasn't sure if that was, the best idea, but I went ahead and dove into it anyway. I'm really glad that I did. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. There are definitely some really uncomfortable moments in the story. You can't help but cry at some points. There is a love story to this story, and that was the part that I went into it blind. I didn't read the synopsis. I didn't care per se what the synopsis of the book was. It had an interesting enough title, and obviously, you're dealing with Nazi Germany, and so I had a general sense of what I thought it was going to be about. And it was those things, but there was also this love story plot line that I did not anticipate going into the book that was really quite, it had some lovely moments to it. So definitely a great book. And then I did start a short little audiobook called The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. It is a middle grade book, but I would say it is definitely on the younger end of that middle grade spectrum versus the upper end. This is the story. It is a series. I do believe this is the first book in a series, and it was a cute little novel about, essentially, there's these robots that are packaged up and being shipped from wherever they were, manufactured to wherever they're heading, but the ship crashes on an island, and all the robots, their boxes kind of slide off the ship when it crashes, and they all kind of die. Obviously they're robots, so they kind of they crash and break apart, and this little robot is the last robot to slide off the ship, and so he kind of crashes into these other robots, but it softens his landing and it lives. And so it talks about how this robot navigates living in nature and all the animals that it stumbles across, and the dynamic, and then the corporation that lost this robot comes to the island, it finds this robot, and then how the animals kind of come to its defense. And it's just a really lovely story. I can't say I got super into it because, again, it was a little bit on that lower end of middle grade. I think it's a nice introduction to stories about robots for younger children who find that kind of stuff fascinating. I can't say this is going to be a series that I'm going to continue on. I didn't find it that fascinating, but it was definitely a cute little story. Last week, I talked about Don't Open Your Eyes by Liv Constantine, and my sister and I did go this week to see these authors. They are a sister duo that go by the Liv Constantine name. And for this particular novel, only one of the sisters wrote this book. The other one is kind of like on a writing hiatus. But what was interesting is the sister Valerie, who's on a writing hiatus, she interviewed her sister Lynn, who wrote this novel, for the author event that we went to. So it was kind of fascinating to hear a different perspective. I finished this. I think I was just in the middle of it when I recorded last week. I finished this. This was a great novel. Very twisty and turning. There were a few plot lines that I didn't really see coming, so I really enjoyed this novel. It just came out this past week on the 17th, so it would be a great novel to pick up. And I'm only finished it because I had an advanced copy of it. So if you're wondering how I read a book that quickly, I didn't. I had an advanced reader's copy of it, so I was able to get a head start on that. I am currently reading The Farmhouse by Chelsea. I don't remember her last name and I didn't write it down. I am about halfway through this book. This is an advanced reader's copy. It did come out this week on the 17th as well. This is supposed to be like a horror / mystery. So far, there's not been anything horrific in it. So if it's horror, it's pretty light horror. But again, I'm only halfway through it, so who knows, maybe more is coming. It is definitely more mysterious than anything. We're following the two characters who have bought a farmhouse in Nebraska, and like for her, the barn keeps moving. She's a runner and she's keeping a runner's log, and the number of steps and the distance, it keeps changing. It's lighting up and playing music in the middle of the night. But of course, her husband's not seeing any of this. So he thinks she's just a little kind of anxious or whatever. So I'm hoping to have this book finished over the weekend. I did get the audio copy of Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This book came out, my copy says February of 2024, so it came out right around that. This is supposed to be a really great, like, springtime book that has to do with like a slow burn, friends to lovers, surprise pregnancy type of thing. So I will probably tag team this book. If I finish The Farmhouse, I'm definitely going to listen to this because I need an audiobook. I finished everything that I've been listening to, so I will start this. This does have quite a few pages. Yeah, 378. So almost 400 pages. I could start it, maybe tag team it periodically with my physical copy at night, depending upon how tired I am. But this is what I'm getting ready to read. I do have a few more advanced readers copies of books for books that are coming out in the next week or two. So I do need to get through those, but I think some of them are like Lisa Jewell, like things that I will just quickly devour, because like Lisa Jewell, she's the type of author that she's sort of like an automatic buy for me, meaning I don't need to know what the book is about. I will just automatically buy it because I know that I'm gonna like it. All right, so shop news. Spring festival season is finally over with me last weekend. Again, Public Knit-Toxication was the last event. Thank you to those of you who came out to see me. It was one of those days that was overcast. There was the threat of storms. I had a whole debacle with a tent that I had purchased that I couldn't get up, but I don't need it, so I ended up risking it. It did start raining right at 4 o'clock when the event happened, but I had an easy setup and I started packing up 20 minutes prior to that, and I was able to get packed up and out of there before it started raining. So I was pretty pleased, but it actually turned out to be a really lovely day. Again, it didn't rain until the event was over, and because it was overcast, it was hot, but it was breezy and there wasn't a ton of humidity. So I thought it turned out to be a rather lovely day. I probably got a little bit more sun than I wanted, but I didn't get sunburn or anything. If you are looking for the cotton wool DK that I used in my Astro Pop, I have all of these colors available, as well as plenty of other colors. If you're still looking for yarn for that Astro Pop knit along that's going to kick off in July, if it were me, I would probably use scrap yarn. Like, you could totally use DK minis for these zigzag stripes and do one color here and here, or do the two colors but still use DK minis. There are a lot of variations. If you're interested, I did a whole video on this sweater pattern to give ideas and just kind of talk through yarn options. By the time you see this, Paisley Purl will be up in the shop. This was a pretty popular colorway at Public Knit Toxication where it premiered. I have dyed it on Fingering, Sport, DK, and Worsted, all my primary bases, and it is almost completely sold out in Fingering. There are still a few, and I will be dyeing up more. So if you pop over there and you don't see what you're looking for, she's going to be a standard color in my lineup. So it will get added back in. And now that the actual Paisley has been here for a while, I feel confident that I can put her down for a nap in her crate and go out and dye yarn for a few hours and come back in. Whereas the first week, I kind of refrained from the dye studio in general. If you want to leave now because you're not interested in hearing more about the puppy, that's fine. But I know there are a lot of you who love puppiness. So I'm going to go grab her and we'll kind of let you have a little look-see-loo and talk about her. Okay, so this is Little Miss Paisley. Yes. She is 9 weeks. By the time you see this, she will almost be 10 weeks old. She is a little over 4 pounds, and she's been here about a week, and we are obviously working on potty training. That's a little hard to stick. She is doing fairly well with crate training. Really, she will sleep through the night. Obviously, I have to get her up a few times. She'll take naps in her crates if I put her in there. She is definitely, our ears have started standing up. This one's starting to lean back a little bit, but she definitely is beginning to learn her social cues from the other dogs. She has quite a spicy little personality. So, she is learning what she can and can't do with the other dogs. Lyric's been really good about appropriately playing with her. Petal is far more rough. I wouldn't say aggressive, but she's definitely rougher with her play. And so she and Paisley have similar personalities, and she's learning what she can and can't do. Legend is just a hunk of solid muscle, and he's so big. I mean, he's 27 pounds. So they're not quite there. He definitely is curious, and he definitely gets excited, and he wants to play with her, but they just haven't really figured out how. And every time he tries, I end up hearing this wail, and it kind of freaks me out. So, because I think he's just taken a paw, and he's just a little too rough with her. I did teach her how to do steps. We have a few steps out the back door, so she did say we learned steps really quickly. She actively, this one day the dogs wanted out in the yard. She was on the sofa, so I put her, I laid her down on the sofa, and I got up and walked across the room, and I opened the door for the other dogs. The next thing I know, she was flying out the door right behind them. So I taught her steps so that she can come in and out of the house, out the back door to the yard. She has also picked up from the other dogs how to come in and sit nicely and quietly, to either have her paws wiped and get a treat. She has just kind of naturally followed suit, like, oh, they're all sitting here, I'll sit here. And she's also learned, like, when we come in the mornings, because obviously the first thing we do is we go outside and we go potty. And when we come back in, I then immediately start filling up bowls, and she has learned to, like, oh, the other dogs are sitting nicely and waiting for her to fix our breakfast. I'm supposed to sit here nicely too. So she's coming right along, but again, she is rather spicy. So I will share updates about her periodically, and hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll have a pretty good puppy. Housebroken, maybe trained a little bit, and we'll see how we do. So that is everything that I have for you today. Please don't eat my hair. So until next week, I would love to hear, what are you watching or reading? What should I get into? So yeah, that is everything that I have for you this week. And so until next time, friends, happy knitting, happy reading. If you'd like to see more of this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you join us over here on the channel.
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat on my skin takes me back to the time met you.